I listened to your Vince Russo, Jim Ross, and Steve Austin podcast the last couple days.
Well, you can see I'm pretty honest about what I've gone through, and I don't know if you want to. Obviously, I don't want to do the same things we did on them because you want to make yours a little different, you know.
Yeah, I'll try and mix it up.
Yeah, whatever you want, man. I'm here for you, and I look forward to this.
All right, I'll get it started then if you're ready.
I'm ready. This looks okay where I'm at. You can see me good. I can't really. I got a little tiny square on my side, so I don't really know.
Yeah, no, it looks great. It
Okay.
actually looks better than the Vince Russo quality one that you had with him.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Yeah, we didn't have the studio, the lighting that we have now. You know.
Yeah, very clear. This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com, and today is our guest for a career shoot interview. We have former WWE and WCW star Johnny B. Bad, aka Marc Mero. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing awesome, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm missing the gym with this lockdown. I bet you probably are too, but I imagine you probably have some equipment at your house.
Well, it's so funny. A couple weeks before this thing happened, I sold all the equipment. I have a beautiful home gym, but I sold it all because I have a personal trainer that I would go to him and I'd have these amazing workouts. I could never work out like I could if I was with a personal trainer. So I ended up selling all my equipment. And we had this pandemic hit us, and I'm using it like those big water jugs that you buy at the store. I'm using
Yeah.
those for like walking lunges and shoulder raises and stuff, but just to do something to stay busy. But I've been, the main thing is eating properly while you can't, work out like you could at the gym.
Yeah, you were always known for having one of the best physiques. You always had your abs in, you always had the tan. What were some of the keys to keeping so trim, even right up until the end of your WWE run? You always had your abs in.
Well, a lot of the guys I traveled with back in the day, when I was with WCW, we trained with travel with DDP or Buff Bagwell or guys that always Alex Wright always wanted to go to the gym. So it's part of our daily thing of going to the gym on the road because obviously being on the road it's hard to stay in the kind of shape you can if you're at home all the time with proper sleep and everything. But traveling with guys that always wanted to work out, also we'd push each other. So that made it a lot easier. And DDP and I are probably the two most competitive people you've ever met. So when I came up with like these crazy ab workouts that we almost kill each other, he would try to keep up with me on everything we would do. And then, sometimes he'd do more and it'd be like, I'd have to compete with him. And even to this age now, I mean, Dallas is going to be, I think Dallas just turned 63. And I'm going to be 60 in 2 months. We do these 10-second push-ups. And I've always wanted to beat him. I finally got to the point where I could beat Dallas. So, anyways, when I go to Atlanta, I always stay with DDP, and we have these push-up contests where I finally beat him. And I was like, yes, that son of a gun got crazy and started just practicing and practicing. And I came back in a couple months later, and the first thing he says to me, he goes, bro, let's go downstairs and do our push-up contest. And he's got it filming it and everything, That son of a bitch got me back and beat me again. So now he's holding the title of our 10-second push-up, but I'll get him back.
What's the record in 10 seconds?
He's up to, I believe he's doing 13 now, which is crazy. Now, when we call it 10-second push-ups, but they're 30-second push-ups because it's 10 seconds up, 10 seconds down and hold it for 10 seconds. So it's 30 seconds for one push-up, but we just call it 10-second push-ups.
And you mentioned Buff Bagwell. I did an interview with him a couple weeks ago. He doesn't seem like he's doing the best these days. Have you been in touch with him at all recently?
Yeah, like all of us, we all go through struggles in life, man. There's the valleys and the mountains in life, and he may be going through a valley right now, but he'll come back. He always does, and as a friend, you just pull for him. I just don't believe in beating a guy when he's down, but he'll be okay.
Now, what I have in my house for training, I don't have any weights, but I do have a heavy bag. I do a little bit of boxing, but I know you started off in sports as an amateur boxer. Do you have any favorite combination drills you could share?
It's always good to start everything off with a jab. You know that, okay? Uh, I always like that jab, right, straight right, hook to the body, right, and then a high left hook. So it kind of mixes it up a little bit.
Now, I heard in some other interviews that you've done, you were a street fighter before you got into boxing. Was that just because you were an angry kid picking on people or almost picking fights, or did people choose to mess with you for various reasons?
I don't know where that story actually came from. I just got the crap beat out of me a lot. Okay, no. When my parents were divorced and we moved to the west side of Buffalo, New York, which was a really bad neighborhood. And this is back in the late '60s. There was a race riots going on all over the country. It was really bad. We had the death of the assassination of Martin Luther King, and a lot of terrible things were happening. And school was so scary because I was the minority in our school that we went to, and man, I was getting in a lot of fights and stuff, and it was really tough. It was a scary time in my life. Being just a little kid too. So you learn how to defend yourself. You learn how to fight back, and you get to the point in your life where you don't take crap from anybody. And I got into a lot of scuffles, but I wouldn't consider myself a street fighter. But it was really boxing that really calmed me down. Actually, when I got into boxing, amateur boxing, I really became dedicated to that sport where I was constantly, eating properly, training really hard, and staying away from any kinds of alcohol or anything like that at that time.
What weight class were you?
I fought light heavyweight, which for amateurs 178.
Okay, and your biggest accomplishments in boxing, I understand you were Golden Gloves at one point.
Yeah, I won the gold medal in the Empire State Games, which is a state title in New York. Then I won the New York State Golden Gloves twice. I had a total of 4 state titles in New York, and then I became a member of the USA boxing team in 1981.
And I understand you had an injury that stopped you from going pro, and that injury during your off time that led you down kind of the wrong path, getting into cocaine and cocaine dealing, I guess.
That was the trajectory that changed my life back then. My for many years I trained so hard. I never took there was no off season in boxing. We'd train all year long, and we'd have tournaments, and you'd even fight in the summer because that's when it was called the Empire State Games in New York. So you always trained for that. And when I decided to come home from the U.S. boxing team and turn professional, because I was at top, I realized when I was with the U.S. boxing team, I realized I was one of the best fighters in the country. So I decided to turn professional in boxing. 2 weeks before my first professional boxing match, I had my nose shattered in an accident, and I needed reconstructive surgery. And in that time off is, when I remember just thinking, I'm going to come back in a year, man, I'm going to eventually become champ of the world. And that time off was the first time that I could ever remember where I had all this free time. Because remember, I was always playing football, hockey, and, boxing, always having sports to go to. And there was always something to look forward to or to train for. Now I had this free time where I couldn't train because it was letting my nose heal. And it was that time where I started to hang out with the wrong kids. And it wasn't, and I could point my finger at whatever, but, it's ultimately my choice to do the things that I did. And I remember thinking, you know what, I'm going to come back and I'm going to be champ of the world. But I started going to parties and I just wanted to have fun. I was like, I didn't drink, I didn't party. And then all of a sudden I started drinking. I started laughing with my buddies, having fun. Then I got into, smoking and doing other things. Then it got into cocaine. And cocaine was the drug that just changed my life. And it was like, oh my gosh, I love this drug. And of course, to afford cocaine, you got to start, it's just so expensive. I wasn't making any money at that time. So I would start dealing drugs, and it got bigger and bigger. And then all of a sudden my nose was healed. I was ready to go back, and I was in no shape to go back to boxing. So 1 year became 2 years, 2 years became 4 years, and 4 years become 10 years of my life of drug addiction. And it was so bad, man. I tell you, So many of my friends got busted. Some of my friends did jail time. I remember they raided my mother's house. They did over $10,000 damage to my mom's house. And we got rid of everything in time, luckily. But, when I think back now, it's like, I remember being arrested myself and thinking, man, this is probably the best thing that ever happened to me. I finally can get my life together again, spend a few years in jail. And then this is when they were searching my mother's house. They had me in a police car. And when they came out and realized there was nothing to be found because we got rid of it all, they let me go. But I went right back to doing the same thing again, and it was like year after year of drug addiction. And it was just a spiral out of control of my life. And that's when I ended up working for a pool company and digging swimming pools. I mean, I went from making so much money dealing cocaine to when everybody got busted, I had to go find a job, and I was building swimming pools. So I moved to Venice, Florida to work with a company called Pacific Pools. And in that time, I'd go to this gym called the Waiting Room. And at the gym, I met some of the guys that were actually guys that were on TV that would, get beat up by the superstars in professional wrestling. We call them jobbers or enhancement guys, whatever you want to call them. And I said, well, how do you do this, man? How do you get to be one of those guys? And they go, well, you got to know how to go to wrestling school. You got to know how to fall. So they told me about a wrestling school in Tampa. It was Boris Malenko, Dean and Joe Malenko's father. So it was about a little over an hour drive. And I started driving there. And I remember Boris Malenko was a no-nonsense guy. And, I remember they do this thing where you would, because wrestling's fake, right? So he'd have you cross your arms and just fall backwards. And I remember landing on my back for the first time. I'm telling you, I sounded like a seal from SeaWorld. I was like, I couldn't even breathe. I'm thinking, how the heck these guys fall like this? But eventually he showed me, he taught me. And then I was, after, doing this for a while, I asked those guys that drove all the way to Atlanta, about a 7 or 8 hour drive from Venice, Florida. And they would go to center stage and they'd hopefully get picked to be one of the guys, and they get paid $150, So I said, can I go with you guys? And sure enough, they allowed me to go, and I had a good physique and everything. So they chose me. I was in a tag team match against Doom. Remember Ron Simmons and Butch Reed, world tag team champions of the world. It's my first match, And I remember the finish was, I think it was Butch picked me up on his shoulder. Ron comes off the top rope with a clothesline or reverse or whatever, which one did that, I can't remember. But they clothesline you off their shoulder and pin you 1, 2, 3. And of course, there's the commercial break and everything that they do. So the match went fairly well, and then all of a sudden they clothesline me, they pin me 1, 2, 3, and of course they're doing their thing in the ring, and I just roll out thinking it's the end of the match. I don't want to be in their way. I didn't really know that I was supposed to just stay there until they told me to get out of the ring. Well, anyways, we went back to the dressing room, and the superstars of wrestling, they had their own dressing room. And then the guys that were the enhancement guys or jobbers, myself included, was in the other dressing room. And oftentimes after you wrestled one of the superstars, they would come into the enhancement guys' dressing room and just shake their hand and say, hey, thanks a lot, great job, I appreciate you doing what you did, And it was just kind of a nice thing to do. Well, I go back to my dressing room, and Ron Simmons and Butch Reed come in, and Butch Reed is livid. He's like, mother effer this. He just went off on me. When we take you down with our finish, you stay down. And it was like the first I heard of this. And I was like, I'm really sorry, man. Really apologize. And he kept going off on me and off on me. And then the switch just turns to me. It's like, hey, man, I said I was sorry. Enough, And then it became F you, F you. And next thing you know, we square off and we're ready to fight. I mean, my first date there, I'm going to fight Butch Reed. And it was Sid Vicious who comes in and separates us. And he goes, hey, Butch, this guy's okay. And Sid didn't even know me, but he just goes, hey, this guy's cool, man. He's okay, blah, blah, blah. And he cooled it down, and then Butch and Ron left the room, and Sid said, hey, kid, you did a great job out there. Next week I'm going to have you wrestle me. or next time we have center stage taping. Sure enough, the next time we come and I wrestle Sid, and it's the old where he puts you out on a stretcher and they clothesline you off the stretcher, and it was horrible, you know. It was great TV. It was what Sid did. There was no one that looked more menacing than Sid Vicious. He had the best look in wrestling back then, you know.
Do you think he gets a bad rap? Sometimes people throw him under the bus, but I've met him a bunch of times and worked with him, and he seems like a really nice guy to me.
I tell you, I can't think of one bad thing I could say about Sid Vicious. I mean, everyone has their issues with people, but he was just so nice to me, man. He was just a good guy to me. And, you know, and part of what he did was really help me get, you know, my foot in the door, because he asked that I could wrestle him, you know, like he wanted, because, you know, I was in good shape and stuff, and he looked like he beat a fairly tough guy, you know, on TV. So anyways, well, right after that match, Dusty Rhodes approaches me and says, "Hey, kid, anybody ever tell you you look like Little Richard?" And I thought he was talking about a wrestler. I didn't think he'd be talking about the singer Little Richard. I go, "I never heard of him." And he goes, "You never heard of Little Richard? You know, wop bop a little bop a wop bop boo." And I go, "Oh, the singer, yeah, I've heard of him." And he goes, "Did anybody tell you look just like him?" And I go, "No, I never heard that before." He goes, "I think I got a gimmick for you." Now, my second time, it was the second or third time driving the center stage, and all of a sudden it was like, I may be one of the guys that goes in the other dressing room, you know. And I remember that. So Dusty Rhodes calls me to the CNN Center, and I was living in Venice, Florida. They wanted me there the next day, so I go out to get my car, and they repossessed my Zuzu pickup truck. I mean, I was so broke at this time. I got no car to get there. And Mark Hildreth, who eventually became Van Hammer, was a friend of mine, and he would come to Venice, Florida, and hang out there. And he drove me to Atlanta, where I got to meet with Dusty Rhodes. And that was where I signed my first contract. And oh my gosh, it was like my life was forever changed. And all because of Dusty Rhodes thinking I look like Little Richard.
Have you heard about the stuff that's gone on with Van Hammer recently, speaking of him?
Yeah, very sad. Very sad. Another tragedy that came out of wrestling, but not because of wrestling, because of his own choices, but just another tragedy. Really, really sad. And I just hope and pray he gets his life together. And he's a good guy, man. He just makes some really bad choices.
You used to be roommates with him at one point, didn't you?
I was, yes. And I got to tell you, that was another crazy story of mine. Was I just signed with WCW, and I didn't have no place to live, so he invited me to stay with him at his house. And I think this might be the first time I shared this story. I don't know if I ever shared this story before, but so anyways, I went to the gym to work out, and I come home to this new apartment I'm staying in. And when I opened the door, all these police officers were like, "Freeze, don't move." And I was like, "Okay, don't shoot," you know? And they raided his house because they suspected he was dealing drugs. And so anyways, he wasn't there. I was there, and I ended up getting arrested. So now I go down to the precinct, I fingerprint, and go through the whole thing. They put me in jail, and the holding cell, and there were other people, and it was so funny because the guys that were in the holding cell with me go, "Man, aren't you the guy on TV?" Because I just started wrestling for WCW, you know. So instead of getting my ass kicked in jail, they loved me. But eventually they obviously dropped the charges, let me out. I have no police record or anything like that, but it was just a crazy time. And it was like, man, I got to get my own place. And but he was very helpful and instrumental getting me into the wrestling world, or helped me get there until that point, obviously. But he eventually got in himself, by knowing me and coming there. And he's got an amazing look. I mean, the guy was 6'6" or something, and he just had a body like an Adonis. He's just incredible athlete.
Was the party scene pretty heavy in those days in WCW?
It was. I mean, it was, especially, when I first started, because it was like you kind of want to fit in. So some of the guys I was riding with back then were heavy into cocaine, which I just got off of,
Yeah.
and now it was like starting all over again, and making some really bad choices. And oh my gosh. And then I started missing shows. And I remember Dusty Rhodes had me come to CNN Center. I drove in, got in his office, and I'll never forget this. I love Dusty Rhodes. I mean, he was the guy that gave me the Johnny B. Bad character. And all the mannerisms I did, I'm so outrageous, it's contagious. Those are all from things that Dusty would do, that he would say, do it like this. And he'd show me how to walk. And we'd be laughing so hard together. He was like a dad to me, I mean, I really loved the guy, So when I walked after missing the show and just being irresponsible, I remember walking into his office, and it wasn't even before he even said anything. I seen the look on his face. A guy who made my career, who gave me everything. I was broke. Now I'm getting 6 figures, and I'm living this incredible life, And I just remember he looked at me and he said, "Kid, I made you, and I could break you." And I just said, "Dusty, man, I am so sorry. I promise you I will never miss another show." And I never did. I never missed another show. Not that I didn't still do drugs or do stupid things, but I never missed a show, and I never wanted to let that man down, because I just seen him hurt like that was more than anything he had to say, because he could have just kept going off on me. But that's all he said was, "I made you and I could break you. Don't ever miss another show." And that was it. But seeing how hurt he was just resonated with me so much, and just a man I truly loved. I mean, he was beloved by so many.
Now, I'm not sure if you were married by the time you got in WCW. I don't think you were, but our fans always like to know what the groupie scene is like with various wrestlers.
Well, I mean, like anything, there was always women around, and you're making good money, and you could afford to go to places and do things, and because something about being on that little square box on television does something to people. And there were a lot of women around. It wasn't hard. You go to bars and it'd be like, the wrestlers are here, and there was a lot of party action, a lot of crazy stuff, sex, drugs, rock and roll. It was like a traveling rock show.
Who came up with the Bad Blaster?
Oh, that was actually me. I thought about going to the ring and having a little fun with it. At first we had a real little one. We first started with this little Bad Blaster. Then it was this company called Aerotechnics. I said, "Can you make me a bigger one?" And they kept getting bigger and bigger. And then, oh my gosh! And then it was like, what am I going to shoot out of it? So we shoot out these. We first would shoot out all this confetti and stuff, and then we started loading it up with real money. And it was like people were fighting over getting the money. So we said, okay. So then we made fake money with these $100 bills with Johnny B. Bad's picture on it. It says, "In Bad We Trust," So it's really, really comical. And to this day, I meet people who go, "Man, I got one of your the bills you shot out of your cannon, or we shot these pogs out, these little different things that people show me to this day that still have them."
Now, you're very well remembered for your matches with Honky Tonk Man in WCW, both because it seemed like you wrestled him a lot, but also, I guess he left WCW because he wasn't under a full-time contract, and I guess he didn't want to continue losing to you. What is your thoughts on the feud in that situation?
I didn't wrestle Honky Tonk a lot. I only wrestled him a couple times, and the one time was he didn't want to drop the strap to me. I don't know all the reasons behind it. I mean, they're in closed door meetings, and I'm just the guy kind of on the outside looking in. I didn't really know all the details to it, and the bookers never really shared with me. I mean, I'm sure he has his thoughts on it. He at that time he just thought it was professionally the best thing for his career. And you look back, you go, maybe he was right. I don't know. When you're in the place that I'm in, you just do what you're told. You don't really argue, or you might have ideas about something, and you're not always happy that you have to drop a strap or whatever, but it's business. So you do business.
Did you get along with him on a personal level?
On a personal level, I never had a problem with him. Never a bad word, never argued with him, nothing like that. I mean, he had his own perception of what he wanted in his career, and then I respect that.
And you also worked with Brian Pillman. What were those matches like?
Oh man, I got to tell you, Brian, we had probably one of my favorite. Maybe the top three favorite matches. Was I think it was Fall Brawl or War Games or one of them that we had like a 30-minute match, and Michael Buffer's the referee, and and it was just we had to go 30 minutes, and so Brian and I we went to the WCW had the power plant, and we'd go down there and we just, he had some great ideas for the match. We did a lot of false finishes and a lot of cool stuff that I got it. He kind of laid out that match, and he was kind of the architect of that match. And I didn't always get along well with Brian. Like, we weren't friends, but we came together for that match and we became really tight. Like I had a whole new respect for him, because on previous matches, it didn't seem like he wanted to do what I wanted to do with things I was better at. I wasn't a very good wrestler at that time. I was learning. I was going to the power plant and practicing a lot because I was brand new. Remember, I got signed in 91. My first time I ever put on wrestling boots was 90 to go to legal school. So I've only been in the business a few months, and next thing I know, I'm wrestling, Sting and Cactus Jack and Brian Pillman, guys I've been watching on television. So there was a kind of a apprehension stuff. So you just listen to whatever they said. And I remember some of our first matches didn't go really well, and thinking, gosh, I got to wrestle this guy for 30 minutes. Oh man, it's a long time to be out there on pay-per-view. So when he laid out the match, I was like, wow, this is really good. And I just started, flowing with Brian. And like I said, I had a whole new respect for him. I actually was really friendly. We became really friendly after that. And to this day, his son and I are good friends. His son came out to one of my presentations a couple of years ago. We've been really great friends since then. And watching what he's done now is like just such a testament to just, saying I'm going to do something and going after it and doing it. So, but Brian was, God rest his soul. He was a complex guy, but what a fire that guy had.
When he called you Johnny B. Gay, was that something that an agent came up with, or was that you guys just ad-libbing?
I never knew he was going to do it, and I don't know if he even knew he was going to do it. I mean, it probably wouldn't fly as well on television today, but back then when he did it, look at my character I played. It was a very flamboyant character. I mean, I never would come out and say I'm gay, but it was like a flamboyant character, outrageous. So whatever his perception was of it, he said that, and it's been forever on YouTube.
You did some stuff with PN News as well. He wasn't a very well-liked guy in the back, from what I understand. Did you get along with him?
I did. I had to work with him quite a bit. And, he was a good guy. I mean, some people just sort of like, oil and water. And it's about, I don't know, just not judging people, but trying to understand people. And I've gotten really good at it as I've gotten older. But back then, I had my own things with people, but PN News, he was a good guy. I mean, he never bothered me. I mean, obviously when you're a rapper, and some people that, whether they don't like rap or they just don't think he can rap, they hated his character. They hated the gimmick. So therefore, some people judged him for that. And it wasn't well received or wasn't merited, I don't think.
And for Kevin Sullivan, he was a booker probably during some periods you were in WCW. What were your thoughts on him?
I didn't have a lot of interaction with Kevin Sullivan. I wasn't close with him, but I mean, after my match, he'd come out in the hallway and, give me a thumbs up or a good job. Or, he said, man, when you're doing this or doing that. And so he had some good advice. Remember, I'm so green back then. I wasn't really involved in a lot of the booking things or in meetings or, they did take you into a room to go over the finish of a match. You just go, okay, that's what it is. So now some guys were very political and they could argue their point, but I didn't know what my point would be. so new at it,
So I imagine being that green and having a contract. I think you said in another interview the first year was 75 grand, second year was double, and this is like literally in your first year of wrestling. Did you have a lot of heat backstage because of that?
Not so much because they signed a bunch of guys with this new deal that they had going. It was 75, 150, and then you're on your own. You negotiate your own deal, and I negotiated a huge deal after that. They doubled my money, plus I got a huge signing bonus. So every year doubling my money, so it was like really good. So that gave me so much leverage when I eventually went to the WWE.
And you worked with Diamond Dallas Page and Kimberly as well in WCW. How were those matches and dealings with them?
Again, some of my favorites were working with DDP. To this day, he's one of my best friends in the world. Okay, and so we used to go to the power plant a lot together and hang out, and so he was like a really good friend all the way back then. And so our matches were, we were both fairly green, and we weren't one of those guys that like they go call in the ring. We weren't at that level. So we'd plan our matches out quite a bit, and we'd go down to the power plant and work on our matches, and we really started gelling together. It seems like we were on every pay-per-view together forever. And everyone was like wrestle him for the money, wrestle him for his valet, wrestle for this title, the world television title. There was always something, and so we had some really good matches. I felt we really had some good matches. We really connected and gelled together.
I think those were actually my favorite matches of DDP's. A lot of people liked him more in the later WCW years, but I liked him when he was a heel for whatever reason. And I liked your character better in WCW too, as probably a lot of fans would agree with me on that. But Kevin Nash, you worked with him a bit too. How was he?
What's funny is wrestling with and when I was with WCW as Johnny B. Bad, I wrestled DDP probably, man, between 100 and 200 times. I mean, we do so many house shows together and travel all over the world together and wrestle each other every night and stuff like that. So, and he never got to beat me. Kevin Nash never got to beat me either. So obviously it's part of the storyline, but I'm wrestling Kevin Nash as Vinny Vegas, as Oz. So they weren't like the Kevin Nash that we eventually came to know and love, but another guy that just really took off, and seeing, because Kevin was a good guy too, man. I really like Kevin, and seeing him just take that leap of faith and go to the WWE at the time, WWF at the time, was just go for it, man. They're gonna do something with you, and they did. He became Diesel and became very over.
Now, I don't know if you've heard this, but I listened to it last night. There's a clip of Eric Bischoff online saying that you were friends, but he really didn't have much of a future for your character at the time you jumped to WWE. And he alleged in this interview that he didn't really want to keep you at the time that you switched to WWE. What's your version of that?
Eric gave me a huge contract when after my second year was up. Eric is the one that negotiated that huge deal I got, and the signing bonus to keep me on at WCW. And then I did 3 more years there after that deal. So it was going to my 6th year and making good money. I met with Vince, and I said to Vince that I would never come to WWE unless I got a guarantee. I got a guaranteed contract. He already gave me a guaranteed contract. I already had a contract with Eric, so a good deal. And they pretty much matched what WWE was going to give me. But I told Vince I can't come there unless I get a guaranteed deal, and he didn't give out guaranteed deals at the time. And he thought about it, and he called me back. He goes, "We'll give you a guaranteed deal." And then I said, "I want a signing bonus too," and he agreed to that. And then I realized that this guy really wants me. And I said, I want my wife to fly. This is when I was married now to Rena, who's became Sable. I said, I want my wife to fly everywhere I fly. He goes, "What?" And I go, "Just listen to me for a second, okay? I see too many divorces in our sport, and all I want is I'd love to see my wife always be with me because I don't want to go through a divorce. And why not use her as my valet since she's traveling with me? He goes, I'm not, I'm just concerned about you right now. So he agreed to it without even seeing my wife. So now I have the signing bonus, I have the guaranteed contract, and I got my wife flying with me. Okay, so he sends me a ticket to sign the contract to come to New York and discuss what character I'm going to be at WWE, WBF at the time. And so he sends me my plane ticket, and I call him back. I go, hey Vince, there's only one ticket here. He goes, well, why do you need more than one? I go, my wife flies everywhere I fly. And he goes, oh my goodness, I've never heard of this before. And he sent another ticket for my wife to come. So me and Rena get on the plane. We fly to New York, to Stamford, Connecticut. And we meet with Vince. And when she walks in with me, he goes, I got to put her on TV. Just like that. And that's how it all started with Sable was born that day. So then we started thinking about names, and we came up with the name Sable. And that's how she got her name. And her first deal was Vince really was, he really admired her and was kind of just taken back by her. And she looked great when we went there.
What other names? I heard you say that they gave you a list of several names when you were deciding on Sable. Do you recall any of the other names they had as options?
I can't remember. There's a whole list of them, but I just remember Sable just really jumping out. There was names like because the Wild Man, like the whole thing about this character Wild Man. I remember when we first sat down and discussed the Wild Man, it was like, I remember Vince saying to me, he goes, can you do a Tarzan yell? And I said, no, I don't have a very strong voice. My voice crackles when I talk loud, it's very raspy. So I can't like do, so I said, I can't really do that. He goes, yeah, we think about this character, the Wild Man. And I thought, ooh, man, okay. I mean, here I am, Johnny B. Bad, an outrageous character, which was fun to play. It was my favorite character because it's not me. It's just like this, you're playing this role every night. So now I'm thinking, what the hell's a Wild Man? Am I from the jungle? I mean, am I Tarzan? Well, what am I? So I didn't really connect with it. And of course, Sable being the one time we got her in this leather outfit, then we got her in long gowns. It was like, we're just so confused on what to do. We tried to do the old Randy Macho Man Elizabeth, where she's beautiful in a gown, and we said, that didn't work. Then we put her in sexy stuff, and they're like, whoa. And, they're cheering louder for my valet than they are for me going to the ring, and I'm doing all this crazy work in the ring, and they're cheering for the valet. And which was fine, but it didn't sit well with the office because they want to get the wrestler over, But when I say didn't sit well, meaning that they're looking at like, wow, this girl's really getting over. We need to get the guy over too, So we had some killer matches. King of the Ring with Stone Cold Steve Austin was a great match back then. I had some good matches with some of the guys there. I'm always had good matches with Triple H, and so really thought that I was able to do this. Then I blew out my knee. And now I need 8 months off. Now remember this is where it really got tough because I was the first wrestler to get a guaranteed contract. Well, even though you aren't wrestling, you get paid a very, very little. It's not enough to live on, but I'm getting my full, 10 grand a week or whatever it was back then, and it did not sit well with a lot of guys. I'm sitting home for 8 months collecting, and they're out there getting paid on whether the show brought in 5,000 people or 10,000 people. They didn't know what they were getting paid, So there's a lot of animosity. And the other thing that was really different was when I was with WCW, I was one of the guys, hanging out with them, going to bars with them, driving with them. Now I'm only with my wife. Not building relationships with the guys, which looking back now, totally stupid. I mean, not even wish it. With all the paths I took in my life ended up to right where I am now, and I couldn't be happier or more blessed in my life now. But when you look back and you say, oh, that probably shouldn't have done that, If I had more of a connection with the guys and drove and worked out with the guys instead of always driving my wife and being with my wife, and it's like we're secluded. And people started treating us like that. And then, of course, once I blew out my knee and Sable started really getting over, there become more animosity. And, it's a business where, honestly, how many spots are available for television? Maybe 20, 25. Really, when you think about it, how many spots are available in a 1 or 2 hour show or pay-per-view? Can we put in so many matches, And if you're not ready to go jacked up, there are 100,000 guys behind you that are. So when you don't want to lose your spot, but you don't want someone taking your spot. So when we get elevated, it took someone's spot away. And of course, now I'm not wrestling anymore because of my knee. And Sable moves into a very prominent role with the company. They're putting a lot of airtime into her, and all of a sudden, Playboy magazine comes along, and all these things. She's doing magazine covers, and it's become very popular. And I remember at the time, I think her merchandise was selling just behind Stone Cold's. I mean, it was incredible, But I got to tell you, I couldn't have been more blessed or happier for us, because they were backing up the Brinks truck in our house, and I was so blessed. And it was like, so what if my career isn't going good? We're going to be married. We'll be married forever. So you look at it as like, what a blessing this is. I didn't care that I wasn't getting over and she was. I mean, sure, I would have loved to get over, but the joy of seeing her just be catapulted to the atmosphere was an incredible feeling, I remember just sitting home watching her on television while I was taking care of our daughter. So proud of her, that she was out there. And whether it's even, I remember they used her one day just to model Stone Cold's 316 shirt, and she walked out and the place went bananas. It was just incredible.
What was the issue between her and Luna backstage?
Well, I mean, some people would come off and say Rena was aloof, didn't get along with the girls as well. I mean, there's different sides of stories, and I really like Luna. I mean, she was crazy funny, and it seems like me and Goldust were kind of trying to keep the peace between us, because when we had matches, the chemistry was incredible. I mean, Rena didn't even know how to wrestle, but we could do enough where the place we'd blow the roof off the building, because it was once they got in the ring and Rena attacked Luna, or Sable attacked Luna, the place went crazy, So we build up for that whole thing, and Luna played that role so well. And Luna, being a top wrestler that she was, obviously working with someone who's never wrestled before to make him look good, there may be some. And I'm not saying there was, because I can only look at it back now and say maybe there's egos involved, maybe there was animosity, maybe Rena was aloof to her in the dressing room. Whatever it was, there was friction there. And, but Luna never brought it in the ring or never hurt Sable. She never was unprofessional, but she voiced her opinion backstage. And it was, just an unfortunate situation back then.
And it was known that Sunny, of course, didn't get along with Sable either. Did you feel that when you were back there?
Yes. I mean, that was heavy, because, and to this day, man, I really like her. She's we've done some conventions. I've seen her, and once in a while we might text each other online or something, but she's wonderful. I mean, she has her own issues. We're all going through stuff, our valleys and peaks and valleys in life and stuff, and she's had her things, but to me, she was always so nice, now we get along. If I seen her, I'd give her a big hug, we got no animosity, but back then, Sunny was the girl. I mean, Sunny she was it, man. And then all of a sudden, someone comes in. Remember, it's all about the spot you have. And when you elevate someone has to come down. So Sunny wasn't ready to give up that spot, and not that she deserved to or didn't. It was just the way the company calls the shots, and you have to do what the company says. They look at who they want to elevate. And sometimes as a fan, you shake your head and go, why are they pushing that guy and not this guy? We don't always understand why, rhyme or reason. You can see a million interviews about guys that, were on top, and all of a sudden, Stone Cold went through a situation where he wasn't going to drop the belt. I think it was to Lesnar or someone. I don't remember exactly.
He didn't want to lose to Lesnar or something.
Yeah. And he walked away. He said, no, it's professionally, it's not what I want to do, but he had that stroke and could do that. And I think he regretted it later on, looking back. I think he he said some things that he said, it's kind of stupid to walk away and do that. But we were in a position then where she was really getting pushed. They had Playboy issues coming out. They had all kinds of things they had behind her. So now the WWE machine is behind her, pushing her. Now it's like, boom, putting her on some television shows. She's on Entertainment Tonight. She's on all these mainstream shows that a lot of wrestlers weren't getting on at the time. And of course, being the first girl to do Playboy was a big deal back then.
Now, how did you actually meet Sable? A lot of the fans wanted me to ask you that.
I shared the story before. It was when I was with WCW Wrestling. We got married a couple of years before I ever went to WWE. She's my wife. I adopted her child, Mariah, who we're real tight to this day. I love her to death. And I got a little granddaughter now. But me, DDP, and Marcus would travel together. And we used to play this stupid game. It's called Give Her Your Best Line. And so, in other words, what it was is if we saw like a hot chick, one of us would say, if it was me, I'd go, hey, DDP, give her your best line. He goes, oh, man. And he'd have to say something to this girl or whatever to come up with some line to try to meet her, So anyways, we do this and we just be laughing because most times people go, what? Anyways, we're in a restaurant. It was a Quincy's restaurant in Jacksonville, Florida. And the Quincy's has this like it's kind of a buffet line, where you get a tray and you go by and you order your food or whatever. And so we're in this buffet line, me, DDP, and Marcus, and we're almost at the cash register. And all of a sudden, this girl with two of her friends, Rena and two of her friends, walk in, and DDP goes, I'll never forget, he goes, bro, give her your best line. I was like, oh, man. And Rena was a pretty girl. So I took a napkin and I wrote, do you like me? Yes or no, circle 1. I mean, something you do in elementary school. So I give it to the cashier. I said, when that girl comes by, give her this napkin and tell her it's from me. I'll be sitting right over there. So DDP and Marcus are busting out thinking this is the stupidest thing they've ever seen, right? We're laughing. So we're all watching her trying to, eat our food. We're all watching her get the note. She grabs the note, she looks at it and just sets it on her tray and walks away. So it was like, and they go, oh, that was a good one. Like we were laughing so hard because she just blew it off, About 15 minutes later, the waitress comes over to our table and she has the napkin. And she goes, that girl over there told me to give you this. And I open it up and she wrote in maybe and circled it. So it was at that point I went over to their table. I told her, hey, we're wrestling in town tonight. Would you and your friends like to go? We'll leave you tickets at the will call window. And that's how I had my first date with Rena. And to carry on with that story, something else funny happened that night. So we go to the wrestling. We do our match and everything, and they wait for us after. And we go to this hotel that we're staying at. And I have my own room. Marcus has his own room. DP has his own room. So usually I would room with one of those guys, but knowing that Rena was coming that night, I thought maybe I'll have my own room and hang out with her, So we after the match, we go to the bar. We have a bunch of drinks. We go back to my hotel room. We're hanging out in the hotel room. All of a sudden, there's a knock at the door, and I get up and I look through the little window and I can see it's Buff Bagwell. And he goes, Johnny, because he was called Johnny from Johnny Be Back. And I opened the door. He goes, I gotta talk to Rena for a second. And she, we were fully dressed. We weren't doing anything. We were just sitting on the bed watching TV. And so he comes in and he starts pretending he's got like a pool stick. And then he does like he's playing pool. She falls back on the bed and starts laughing. And what it was is Marcus was in his hotel room and he was flipping to the TV channels and he saw one of those like 1-900 numbers where you could meet this girl, and it was her because she was a model and she did commercials.
Oh, wow.
So
you mean it's not those girls on the line when you call?
Yes, and it was so funny that I'm in the room with the 900 girl. So, and it was just a silly thing that happened. And then but she was an amazing girl, and we got really tight, and we got married in 1994. And she just was happy being a housewife, staying at home. But then when we went to the WWE or WWF, is when our lives were forever changed because of hiring a nanny to take care of our daughter, and it caused a lot of issues with our daughter. And she had to this day, I mean, she has issues about being home without her parents. So it's something you always remember.
And of course, you're well remembered for the little angle you did with Mr. Perfect in WWE. Any thoughts on that?
I really like that guy. I actually got to wrestle Mr. Perfect one time. He is one of the most smooth. I tell you, it's called a dance, and there's dance partners that can make you look so good because even if you don't know how to dance, Mr. Perfect he looks like he could be killing you, and you don't even feel it. Like you don't even know if you're selling it right because he's so smooth. He was truly one of the best. I mean, the angle was obviously I'm dropping the strap to Triple H. It was his first title actually, and the way they did it was I pretty much won the match until I get hit over the head with a chair. So it's kind of like the old slip on the banana peel. So it didn't really make me look bad or so on, but it was the end of my reign as the Intercontinental Champion.
And of course, you brought it up earlier, the King of the Ring match with Austin. You ended up splitting his lip open, and that led to the Austin 360. So you subconsciously caused it. Any memories of working with him?
Oh my gosh! Well, Stone Cold and DDP and Triple H are probably three guys I wrestled more than anybody. I mean, a couple hundred times, only because we were in WCW together, and then of course WWF together. So Stone Cold, truly one of the best. I mean, that guy is a ring general. He was so good to work with, and always, and he was one of the few guys that I had certain moves that I was really good at, or could do, and you can't do them with everybody because some guys just can't, flip and flop like that. There wasn't a move I could do that Stone Cold couldn't, roll with or do it with me and make me look good. He was amazing, man. But it was so funny because before I did his podcast, he even wrote on Twitter. He said, I owe John 316 or I owe Austin 316 to Marc Mero. If he never split up my lip, I never would have had the opportunity to hear what Jake said and come back and use that line. So I just reminded him of the royalties he actually owes me. Okay. No, he's I really, something. He's another guy. I didn't really have a real friendship with when we were working together. He was pretty much business, and he was always with whether it was when he was with Lady Blossom or Deborah or whatever. I mean, so he traveled with his
Lady Blossom wanted me to tell you hi, by the way.
Oh, she's a sweetheart. She was so nice. She was always so kind. So Steve and I have never really had like a friendship, but we have such an admiration for each other now. I mean, he really is. I not only did when I did this podcast, when we finished the podcast, we talked on the phone for probably 45 minutes. Just talking about old times and he's really proud of what I'm doing now. So it really, to even realizes some of the things that I've been doing lately was pretty cool. And I just really have a high esteem for Steve.
Yeah, it seemed like you had a good chemistry with him on that podcast. A lot of fans brought up before I did this interview, I guess there was some rumor, I don't know where it comes from or if you've heard it, that I guess he was supposed to have a run with you allegedly, but you took a power bomb from Sable and then he ex-nayed it. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, there is. I mean, from what I hear, I mean, Steve will have his own take on it, but just from what I hear, we were supposed to have a run together, and when they saw me, of course that was mine. I brought it to Vince Russo and said, "Hey, we want to get her over. Let's do this." And at the time, like I said, I just wanted. She was on such she was on such a trajectory. It was like, just keep it going, you know? So for her to sable bomb me, be like, oh my gosh, you know? But of course, it took me out of working with Stone Cold because, you know, think about from his point of view, he's the baddest, one of the baddest asses on the planet. And it's like, this girl just kicked his ass. I'm going to let him get in the ring. I'm going to bump around for him. So totally understand it. And looking back on it now, it's like, you know what? He was probably right. You know, you don't want to have you know, so-called girl beat you up in the ring and then go and fight the top guy in the company and almost beat him. What does it say that the girl is? What would she do to Stone Cold? You know, so I could understand where he was coming from. And but again, if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't have changed anything, only because of, like I said, all the paths I took ended up to where I am right now, and maybe things would have changed. Who knows?
And I guess Mick Foley took a shot at you in his book or something because I guess he was jealous that you had a guaranteed contract when you first came in and he didn't. Did you guys ever get a chance to discuss that and kind of put it behind you?
We did, and I got to tell you, I love Mick Foley. I think he is one of the kindest. He has so much empathy and compassion for other people. And I mean, I'm really going to say I love Mick Foley. But Mick Foley did something that, you know, I never was upset about that. I mean, gosh, you could go through YouTube and see thousands and thousands of wrestlers that are bashing other people. And, you know, it's you know, I just try not to go there, you know. But Mick wrote me a beautiful message on Twitter one day. And he just said, you know, back then, I was a little caught up in the business, and you know, because I you know, I'm getting these guaranteed contracts ahead of Austin and Foley and two of the top guys that I've ever put on wrestling boots, you know, and here's this guy getting this guaranteed huge contract, and they're busting their ass on the road, getting paid, you know, a tenth of what I was getting paid, you know. So I can understand the animosity and you know, him saying that in his book, you know, I can understand where he was coming from at the time, but even looking back, that he even took the time to apologize to me, and since then we've been great friends, you know. And not that I was upset with him, or because I did understand where he was coming from, and sure, I look at it as someone that you know didn't accomplish nearly the things I accomplished, is making 10 times more money than me. Is go, why is that dude making so much money, you know? But you know, when you really look at it from my point of view, what was I supposed to do? Go, you know, Vince, no, you're not paying those guys that much. I think I just want to get paid what those guys are getting paid. Of course not. You have to look out for yourself and your family. And Mick, looking back now, could totally understand it from my point of view. And like I said, just a great guy.
I actually remember watching you wrestle Mick at a house show in Hull, Quebec back in 1996. And that was like before WWE blew up. I remember you and Sable were there, and there was only about 1,000 fans in attendance. Then the next year, you guys were back in the big arenas, and there was like 5,000 or 6,000 fans. So it's amazing how big WWE blew up from the time you arrived to like the next few years later. What was it like being part of that boom?
You know, you know, they call it the Attitude Era. You know, when you look around, when I think back now, and I'm in a dressing room, and you look around, who's there? You know, there's The Rock, there's Triple H, Generation X. You know, Mick Foley. I mean, you look around this locker room that had, you know, the most incredible names in professional wrestling. Shawn Michaels, you know, Ric Flair, and it was just incredible to be there in that time of probably, maybe some people might say, some of the greatest times ever in the business, you know, that I was actually there and got to experience that. So I look back, what a blessing that was to be a part of the Attitude Era.
And you were, of course, part of the Brawl for All. I'm not sure if you saw the new documentary that came out about it.
I didn't see it, but a bunch of people have written to me and said that you know, that they did talk about that.
What are your memories of that? I actually rewatched your fights last night. It seemed with JBL, he was way beyond your weight class. And then Steve Blackman was just doing takedowns, which of course you're a boxer, not an amateur wrestler.
You know, the funny thing is I never even got hurt. I mean, there's a lot of guys that got hurt really seriously, you know. The thing was about this was when they came to me, I used to be a boxer, but I was a boxer at 178 pounds. And I've had 14 surgeries, my shoulders, my elbows. I have no like the speed or the control I once had as being a top flight boxer. So when people said, you're a boxer, you're going to do great, it was like, you have no idea. I can't even do what I used to do, But I still have a fairly good reflexes, and I didn't really get hit at all. No one really hit me. It's like I could move my head enough to stay out of the way. Like even if I would have fought someone like Bart Gunn or Butterbean, they never would have really connected with those big knockout punches that a lot of guys were getting knocked out by. Being a boxer, you really learn how to you have great peripheral vision and stuff. So, anyways, to make a long story short, yeah, Steve Blackman, he just kept taking me down. It was like so frustrating. It was like one of those things where you just go, when is this thing going to end? And finally it was over. It was like, oh, that was terrible. But you know what? I think we got paid $5 or $10 for each match. I can't remember what it was, but so it was over, done with. I'm out of it. All of a sudden, Blackman got injured, and they called me up and they said, hey, Blackman was supposed to fight Bradshaw. You want to take his place? I was like, absolutely. Because Bradshaw and I didn't, at that time, I did not like that guy at all. And I know he hated my guts. When we would wrestle each other, man, I have never been powerbombed harder in my entire life. Like, he always wanted to hurt me, and he didn't like me, and he made it real clear he didn't like me. And at the time he had, I don't know what they called the wrestler's jury or whatever they would call that.
Wrestler's court.
Yes, yeah. And I never got involved with that stuff. I never played to it. So I really wanted to fight Bradshaw. It was like, absolutely, And the fight went 3 rounds, and they called it a draw, and then we had to go one more round, and they gave the decision to him. And again, he's a big guy that took me down and won the match. But now, 2 guys that did not like each other at all. Now, fast forward 20 years later, he does so many great things, man. I mean, he is a entrepreneur that used his wealth to help these kids in Haiti with water in Africa or whatever that is. He does just so many amazing things. And I actually reached out to him and wrote him and told him how proud I am of him and what he's done. And he wrote me back a beautiful letter. And now here's a guy. It's amazing how life is, when you really can look at something differently, instead of always saying, I hate that person or I don't like. I always found that forgiveness is the key to moving on in life. And I don't remember think of any animosity towards the guy now or something he might have said about me or whatever. But I know if I ever see him, I'd give him a big hug, man, and just thank him for everything he has done for helping so many kids, man. He's just, he really is amazing. And again, a lot of love for Bradshaw.
So the clip of him, there is a clip of him speaking negatively about you on the internet. That's before you guys made up, I would assume.
Even if it was now, I wouldn't be mad. That's how I am. You know what? There's people are always going to say negative things, See, I always say, don't let criticism, go to your heart, man, because people are always going to criticize you. Life is not perfect. I don't care who you are. There's always going to be someone. There's always going to be haters out there. But as far as I know, man, there's we buried the hatch a long time ago.
And just from the fight perspective, that was an unsanctioned fight done under the disguise of pro wrestling. A match between you versus him with that weight difference would not have been sanctioned by a boxing commission.
I know, but
yeah.
WWF.
I'm just letting people know, just so they know, just because that was popping into my head when I was watching that fight last night. But you did have good movement. The other thing I noticed, you wore wrestling boots.
What's that?
You wore wrestling boots, which would seem to me would be a negative.
It is, yeah. But, take nothing away from Bradshaw. He is a tough son of a gun. I mean, that is just you ask anybody, that guy is one tough guy.
And one other issue I guess you guys had back there, I guess at one point, X-Pac defecated or something in Sable's bag or something.
Well, you've done your homework. Actually, funny thing, okay? Looking back now, it's hilarious, okay? When we decided that we were done with wrestling, the European tour was our last that was it. We're done. We had plenty of money to live the rest of our lives. And we got in the car to go back, and I started smelling something. It's like, what is that smell? I mean, it's just like a dog defecated in the car. What is going on here? And she's going, oh my gosh, what is that? And she opens her bag and she finds the poop. And it was like, oh, that's so disgusting. You know, it was like horrible. We had to throw out the bags and everything, you know, it was just terrible. But we didn't know who did it at the time, you know, but it was like, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. It was like, we're done. We're out of here. We're never coming back, you know. And we quit. We quit the business. Remember, I quit with a contract of $350 a year, guaranteed, and signing bonus, merchandise, and everything else, right? So on top of $350, who knows how much money we could have made, you know? 3 years left on my contract. I walked away and said, keep it. I don't even care. I'm done. And I quit. And, you know, my wife at the time, Sable, Rena, quit with me. And we just decided to move to Hollywood and she'd pursue a movie career. And that's what we did. But never knowing who was the one that defecated in her bag. Then when it came out to that we did know it was X-Pac, it was, I don't know. It's hilarious to me now, you know. I've actually talked with him about it. It's like we have no animosity towards the guy. It was a funny rib when you really think about it.
Well, I guess in the end it helped towards Sable's settlement too, probably.
Well, that was another thing, you know. They're you know, I can't really say anything about that, you know, but
it's probably a non-disclosure, I guess, whenever.
Yeah, it is. But think about this. If it was such a great settlement, you know, no matter what, she wanted to go back, you know, and that was the biggest shock of my life at the time. You know, she tried her hand at movies in LA, and we even got an apartment we rented for a year out there, a beautiful apartment. And then I remember one night she come to me, she goes, what would you think about me going back to wrestling? I was like dumbfounded, like shocked. Like, first of all, it wouldn't be safe because of all the lawsuit and the sexual harassment, all the things that were brought out, that you can't go back to that place. And I said, Vince would never take you back. And she goes, well, I called him. I go, you called Vince? I didn't know about it. And she said that he would think about it. I was dumbfounded. And so once Vince agreed to bring her back, she had to go and apologize to all the top guys at the time, Undertaker, and I can't remember who else she had to apologize to, but that was part of her thing, was going to apologize to some of these people. And I remember I stayed home. Obviously, I was going to stay. I wasn't going back. There's no way. But I would stay home and take care of our daughter. So while Sable was on the road, I was taking care of our daughter. And you know, that's when our marriage ended.
So I've heard you say it on some other podcasts, but our fans are different fans. So I was wondering if you could tell the story on basically how she ended up leaving you, I guess.
Well, it was every night before Mariah went to bed, we'd call her and we'd say, how's your day? And it was always really good conversation. Mariah always wanted to talk to her mom before she went to bed. And I just remember that it just seemed like it was getting harder and harder to get in touch with her. And then there was days that she didn't even answer her phone. It would just go to voicemail. And I was thinking, why? Where's my wife? You know, I know the wrestling matches are over. They got to be either driving to the next town or in a hotel room. And there's no phone call back. There was nothing, you know. So I remember leaving a very nasty message, like, you know, I can't believe you don't call us back. You know, this is rude. Well, I don't remember what I said, but anyways, I started feeling bad for saying that, you know, and I go, you know what? And I knew her access code to her phone like she knew mine. They're a married couple, you know. So I called back the phone and I go, I'm going to delete that message. I don't want her to hear that. You know, she's probably got enough stress on the road. I dialed the number and it says, you have 2 unheard messages. I thought, okay, so I got to listen to first one to get to mine, and it's this man's voice apologizing for the night before. And, and I was like, what the heck? And it was pretty graphic, and I was very taken back. And then I was realizing that she's seeing somebody else, it was devastating. I mean, I thought we'd be married forever, and I just remember, and anyone that's gone through a breakup or lost a loved one, you know the feeling. It's like just your heart, you can't sleep, you can't eat, you're just miserable. And I didn't say anything, and then I deleted my message, and then I picked her up at the airport, and I said, I want to know who this is. And she goes, what are you talking about? So she first denied it, and then she just said that she's going to be moving out and she wants a divorce. And it's like my world ended there, man. The most devastating, hurtful, didn't know what I was going to do. Because now, you obviously split everything up and you go your own way and life changes. And I got back into drugs. I got back into living a horrible life, horrible financial decisions. The housing market tanked. Everything that could go wrong went wrong in my life, to the point where I just didn't even want to be here anymore. And then, just making an amazing comeback in life. And that's part of the story I share at schools and churches and corporations now, was that, no matter how bad it is, no matter what you're going through, and there's a plan, a purpose for your life. And we could all come back from adversity, especially we're all going through this pandemic now. We had to find a way to I'm doing 250 events a year, traveling all over the world. All of a sudden it ends. I got no place to go, no schools, no places, we can't go anywhere. So what do? We make a studio, and we're doing virtual presentations from our studio now. Reinvent yourself, never giving up, always find a way to keep going, keep moving forward in life. So after that happened, obviously she ended up marrying Brock, and they got kids together. And God, I'm really, if I ever had, I don't talk to Rena anymore. Not that I don't want to, or not that we just have, she's in her own life, I have my own life. We've gone our separate ways. But if I ever could say anything to her, is thank you. If she never left me, I never would have done the things I've done, and never would have met the people I met. I never would have had this amazing company changing lives all over the world. I never would have done this. This was done out of, finding your passion in life. So I have no animosity towards them. I'm so happy for their life and their kids and everything for their success. But I just know that, man, I'm in a place now that I've been blessed to help other people. There's no greater joy than that.
Did you ever have a talk with Brock or anything since that happened? Like, get to see him in person, and any type of apology or anything from him?
No, and I don't expect a Christmas card or anything. But you know what? He doesn't owe me an apology. Life, like I said, I can't thank my ex enough for leaving, because last thing you want to do is, you don't want to have someone in your life that's not in love with you. Just to make you happy. That's not a marriage. Has to be two people that really love each other, that they want to be with each other so badly, and there's ups and downs in marriages, but you work through them. But you would never want to be with someone who's not in love with you. So it all turned out good.
And I understand when she was doing all those Playboys, I think there was 4 Playboys altogether. You attended quite a few Playboy Mansion parties. What were some of the things that you may have witnessed at the Playboy Mansion?
Well, without getting, graphic, they're pretty wild. We went to the Halloween party, Half's birthday parties. We went to the Midsummer Night Dream parties. Half was really tight with Darlene back then. She had one of the, I think it was the fastest selling Playboy in history at that time. It was incredible how, because the machine was behind her, the WWF machine was behind her. So it did amazing. You couldn't even find that magazine for a while. They had to do reprints of it and everything. It was incredible how well it was. So of course, gave Playboy a big shot in the arm. So they treated her like, their top girl. And they flew us in, we'd hang out there. And was an incredible, the mansion and being around, and then you're just sitting there, and all of a sudden James Caan walks in. There's Carmen Electra. There's Pam Anderson. I mean, it was incredible, the people you would see at these parties.
Wow. And I guess you would just sit around and mingle with these people. And would people be wearing clothes?
Well, I mean, it was very scantily clad. The girls
Yeah.
that were there, when some girls would just go topless and or have paint. A lot of girls were painted. They had their painted stuff on. But I'm sitting there. I know, like one time I'm at the bar, and this guy kind of moves in kind of quickly and kind of nudges me, and not on purpose or not being rude or anything, but he was just trying to get in to get the bartender's attention. And so I kind of spin around, and he spins around. We look at each other. It's Rod Stewart. I'm like, this is Rod Stewart sitting next to me at the bar. So it was pretty incredible, the people you would see there.
Now, I've never been married to a Playboy model, let alone a best-selling one. Is that awkward at all? Like, or does it cause you any jealousy to know that all those people saw your wife naked?
No, I mean, looking back on my life now, it was a mistake. It really was, and not. God, please don't take this as being something against her. It was a decision we made, not her. And here we are, Christians. We're going to church and we're raising our daughter in the church, and next thing you know, your wife is in Playboy. And millions of people are seeing her naked. And and I remember we were sitting at a table, and I've shared this story before. I don't remember who said it first, or I can't remember. And if it was me, I would solely admit it, but I don't really remember. But one of us said, I know this is wrong, this is sin, but God will forgive us. And He will forgive us. But the problem is that there's consequences to your actions in life. And from that moment on, I really believe it was the end of our marriage. I really believe it. It doesn't matter how much money you were making, because remember, that second Playboy, I mean, she got well over $1 million for doing that, just to do the shoot on top of quarter an issue of their normal sales, and all the things that she got for that was incredible, but looking back, it's like, it didn't even matter. I mean, it ruined our life, and it's not something you look back on your life and go, I am so proud that my wife was in Playboy. God, it's like, when people even mention it now to me, it's kind of like, yeah, I'm kind of glad that chapter of my life's over with. I couldn't imagine being married to someone or wanting your wife to do that, But don't get me wrong, I'm not one of those square. I mean, everybody has their own reasons, and I don't want to come across as better than anybody, because I'm not. But just now in my life, I have a whole different take on it.
And you were working the night of the infamous Montreal screw job. What were your thoughts on that when that was going on?
I actually got dressed right next to Brett. We were sitting next to each other in the locker room when that whole thing transpired. Oh my gosh, I remember really for the first time ever in a locker room being scared, like thinking there's going to be a riot. There's going to be people going to get hurt really bad, because this guy, Brett, was, I mean, under Wayne Gretzky is Bret Hart, you know what I mean, for Canada. And I just remember it was a scary time. And of course, Brett going and knocking Vince out, and then you think about what's the detrimental effects going to happen here. Are some guys going to fight these guys, or what's going to happen? Whose side do you take here? I didn't understand. I mean, nobody knew about it. Nobody knew there was going to be a screw job that night. It was like common knowledge. Nobody knew. Brett didn't know. So,
were you out of the dressing room by the time the attack on Vince happened?
I can't remember exactly when that happened. I just remember wanting to get out of there, get my wife out of there, because it felt really unsafe. It felt like people are going to get hurt bad,
and
like there was going to be a riot.
Now, when you search your name, a lot of stuff pops up about Chris Benoit, because you were one of the wrestlers that did a lot of interviews shortly after that horrific tragedy happened. What are your thoughts on that overall? I know you wrestled Benoit quite a few times.
I did, yeah. And I really liked Chris. Oh my gosh, we got along great. Chris was a kind person, you know. I mean, whatever happened that night, how he snapped or whatever, you know, whatever the reason for that happening. I mean, I don't know if anybody will ever really know, you know. I mean, obviously, um, they say he had brain damage or whatever. I mean, that's, you know, whether it's scientific or whatever, I don't really know. But I know that, you know, the reason I spoke out was that if I wanted to do steroids, I could do steroids. If I wanted to take pills or whatever, well, there's nobody watching or anybody, you know, and guys are dying. Remember, this isn't like, you know, he's the only one that died. There was quite a few guys that died while I was there, you know, and you know, I mean, think about Brian Pillman not coming to the arena. I mean, there was just a lot of tragedies, you know, and there's two types of people. There's people that say something needs to be done, and then there's a person that says, I want to go out there and do something. And for years I was guilty. Why don't they do this about this? Or why don't they do this about that? You know, we don't have health insurance. We don't have this. And I remember speaking out, and I look back now, it's like, there's not a lot of wrestlers that actually died like when I was there, you know? And maybe, you know, and now any wrestler that has drug or alcohol problems can go get rehab for free at WWE. On WWE's dime. They can pay for it, you know? That was all brought in because we spoke out against it. We said enough was enough. And they have strict drug testing now. I mean, I think they have like Olympic drug testing now. So, you know, maybe instead of guys that have been bashing me about it, maybe some guys should say, hey, because of some few people like Marc Mero that stood up, maybe some guys' lives have been saved because of this. You know, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. It's just something I felt needed to be said and done. I did it. And, you know, obviously I have no relationship with WWE now. It's sad because I have the top school program in the country. How cool would it be to be partnered with WWE, saving and changing lives all over the country? You know, having that machine behind you, imagine how many more lives we save. I mean, they have, I think it's called the Be a Star program. But if you really look at what it is, it's you get a couple wrestlers that come out and the kids go crazy because they see a wrestler on TV. But when they walk out of there, it's not like their life has been changed. You walk out of my presentation, we get about 100 letters a day on how the presentation changed or saved somebody's life. There are so many kids going through depression, anxiety, isolation, loneliness, self-harm, suicidal thoughts, more than ever before. And this is why it's so important that we need programs that let kids know they're not alone, they matter, and the greatest thing they could do is open up and talk to somebody about it.
Well, just knowing how WWE operates, some of it could be that Brock Lesnar is one of their top stars, and of course he's married to your ex, and they might not want to rock the boat by being associated with you, even though, as you said, that could be a great thing, but that might have something to do with it. I don't know.
You know, whatever the
But
reason is, there's lives that can be changed or saved, and that should be first and foremost that we can make a difference. I have no beef with Brock or Triple H or anybody in that organization, you know. But how cool would it be to work together to make a difference in this? And not only that, I mean, I'm in front of, you know, when I'm talking about 250 events a year, I'm in front of thousands and thousands of students. Imagine having a WWE banner up or something, or, you know, it do nothing but promote their product.
And I've seen you on a few of those episodes you did regarding Benoit with superstar Billy Graham, who I've done a bunch of interviews with. I know you've purchased some of his artwork. I know you helped him out last year when he needed medical funding. Could you talk about him a little bit?
First of all, Billy Graham, I didn't purchase his artwork. He sent that to me as a gift. That guy, he came to my office and we had a great meeting. And next thing I know, a few months later, there was a big package in front of my door that he painted this beautiful, beautiful painting for me. It's hanging in my living room right now. And he put a banner on it to thank me for all the work I've done with students. But yeah, he's an amazing artist. Really like Billy Graham. I mean, you know, he has his own thoughts on the business, and he's very adamant about how he feels. And you got to respect the guy for the way he feels. I mean, I may not agree on some of the things he says, but as a person, man, I love the guy. He's a great guy.
And did you ever try to go back to WCW after your WWE run ended?
There were some feelers out. We went. Me and my ex showed up at one of their events but it just wasn't in the cards. I remember something. At that point, I'm 40 years old. I've had a lot of surgeries, a lot of joint problems. Elbows, shoulders, total reconstruction of my knees. So was it really now? I mean, it's incredible the shape I'm in now. It's amazing. I can go back to wrestling now. Not that I want to. It's definitely not want to. I enjoy what I do so much now. I never would want to. I can't even think of being hurt, and not being able to do what I do now. So I wouldn't even take that chance.
Everyone wanted me to ask you, who would you have a retirement match with? You never actually had a retirement match. If you could choose anybody.
That's a really good question. If I had to wrestle, and I would pick someone I never wrestled before, and it would be probably Shawn Michaels. I tag teamed with him before, and he's just super talent, But if I had to say someone I never wrestled before, I never wrestled him, with him as a tag team, but never against him. So I would maybe Shawn Michaels would be a good one.
And when you visited Vince's house, another fan question, they wanted to know what was his house like and his courting of you.
Oh, he was so good. I mean, beautiful home in Connecticut. It was the first time I got to meet Linda and the family, and we had a nice dinner together. And he was just really kind, and he really pursued me. I mean, I really think, for some reasons, I think they thought they could get the Johnny B. Bad character or something similar. And of course, at that time, the war with WCW was so strong that they didn't want to take a chance of having any mannerisms or similarities to the Johnny B. Bad character. So I had to go from, I'm so outrageous it's contagious to I'm a wild man.
Your music was also a lot better in WCW. I'm sure you might agree with that.
Yeah, I think Michael Hayes was partly responsible for writing that song. He was a pretty talented guy too, as far as.
Is he one of the agents that you liked working with, Michael Hayes?
I never worked with Michael Hayes as an agent.
Okay.
Yeah, he was never an agent when I was there.
Was there any WWE agents? I know it's a lot less hands-on than it is now, where they basically plan out your whole match, but I'm sure there was agents assigned to matches back then.
Yeah, oh God, what was the one guy's name that was, I think it was like a tag team partner with Blackjack Mulligan. Was it, Jack Lanza. Jack Lanza was one of the agents that was always there, and he was a good guy, man, It was, the road was tough. I mean, whoever it is, agents, referees, wrestlers, the road is tough. It takes its toll on you.
And you mentioned you probably would have done better against Butterbean than Bart Gunn did because you're more of a skilled boxer. That was your background. You also had a feud with Butterbean. Yeah. How was that?
I mean, the match went as good as could be expected. I mean, here you got this real tough boxer, and we're doing a gimmick match. The funny thing that happened in that match was there was two stools underneath the ring. One stool was after each round. I would sit on that stool, and then the other stool was a gimmick stool that would just shatter into a million pieces once you hit him over the back. The finish was I'm going to hit him over the back with a stool. Well, the trainer that was with me handed me the wrong stool, handed me the real stool. And so when I'm thinking this thing's going to shatter all over the place, and I hit him and it doesn't even move. It doesn't even break. And I think, oh my gosh, I just hit him so hard and the stool didn't even break. And it was hard to hold because I had boxing gloves on, So I thought, I got to do it again, you know? So Butterbean's laying on the ground and I hit him again and just the top part breaks off. But that was a shoot. That thing was, that was a real stool. That's how hard I hit him, you know? And then, so that night we go to dinner and Butterbean says to me, he was such a sweetheart of a guy too. I really, great guy. We're at dinner and he goes, wow, he goes, I thought that stool was supposed to break away. That really hurt. I go, well, sorry about that. They gave me the wrong stool. He goes, what? It was comical.
And last question here. Jim Cornette was working, I think, on the writing team along with Vince Russo back when you were in the WWE. What are your thoughts on both of those guys? They have conflicting views, but they were both working at the same time then.
You know what? It's total different views on the business. You know, I looked at, I got along really well with, not that I didn't get along with Jim Cornette, but I didn't have a lot of interaction with him. Vince Russo, he was kind of like Sable's mentor. Like his writing was based around a lot of stuff that she was doing. So I was in a lot of those meetings, you know, discussing it because I was trying to teach her how to wrestle. I mean, she never wrestled in her life. The only wrestle, I mean, we never went to a wrestling school. We practiced like before the matches that we were in that town, and we tried to show her some moves and stuff. And she actually learned, you know, Hurricanrana off the top rope, the Sable Bomb, the TKO moves that I would do that I was able to teach her how to do them. So to her credit, man, she's a really good athlete and she learned fairly quickly. But I mean, people just look at her like she was a crappy wrestler, but she never really wrestled, you know? But so Vince Russo and I were very tight when it came to a lot of decision making and the ideas we had for the shows. I mean, remember the painted hands? Those were my hands. I had to draw them out on her, you know? So, you know, those were our ideas that we'd come up with. But Jim Cornette was never really hands-on with us. He was always behind the scenes more.
So do you think Vince Russo is underrated for the people that throw him under the bus all the time?
I think Vince Russo had a lot of great ideas. I mean, you know, I think when you take someone and because he had some really good ideas, that when something doesn't go the way maybe they envisioned it, he's more blamed for it going wrong than all the things that went right. I mean, we remember the Attitude Era was a lot of Vince's writing, and he was very responsible for a lot of the cool stuff. But I think he gets you know, I mean, there's going to be haters no matter what. You know, I like Vince. I really do. I think he's a very good person, and he means well, and he really cares about people. I think he takes a lot of stuff to heart, and I think he gets hurt a lot by people. And if I could ever give him any advice, is you're not defined by their opinion. He's a great guy.
And where can people follow you if they want to look you up on social media or book you for an event?
Oh man, I'm on Instagram and Twitter. It's just my name, Marc with a C, Marc Mero, Mero. And then our YouTube page, we just hit 100,000 subscribers, which is the Marc Mero.